Come now. Rest your mind. Let the day fall behind you like a heavy winter cloak sliding from your shoulders. Wherever you are, whether lying in bed, tucked beneath a blanket, or listening from your quiet little corner of the world, let your body grow soft. Loosen your jaw. Unfurrow your brow. Allow your shoulders to melt down into the warmth beneath you. Take a deep breath in through your nose, and exhale slowly, as if releasing a single puff of frost into a starlit sky. Again, inhale deeply and let go. Feel yourself sink, deeper and deeper. Imagine now the gentle hiss of falling snow. The hush of a forgotten land where time flows slower than sleep. A world far away from the noise, the worry, the rush. You are safe, you are still, you are welcome here, because begins in the frozen kingdom of Vyrnhal. It was a land of glass and silence, a realm blanketed in endless white. The trees stood like skeletal hands frozen in prayer. The mountains curled protectively around the valley, their peaks crowned with halos of wind-blown ice. Vyrnhal had once been a place of fire. Long ago, before the cold came, the kingdom's heart pulsed with warmth and color. Great forges lit up the skies, and the people were known for crafting blades from dragonbone and building towers that whispered flame into the stars. But now, the forges were cold, the dragons extinct, and the only warmth that remained. They called it Svarnheim, the Sleeping Hollow. No road led there. No map marked its place. It was hidden beyond blizzards, lost to time and guarded by a silence so deep it had its own gravity. They said a dragon slept beneath it. It's not just any dragon, but the last. The last ember of fire in a world gone to frost. Our story begins not with the dragon, but with a boy. His name was Corin, a thief, a shadow, a whisper in the dark. He lived in the ash-lit gutters of Iron Hollow, the last city before the snow consumed the world. There, he survived by picking the pockets of men who once wore crowns and now begged for moldy bread. Corin had never seen a dragon. He had never even seen fire that was in tea trapped behind iron grates or carried in shaking hands. But when the Queen's agents came, offering gold for a thief who could go where soldiers could not, Corin listened. They wanted him to find the mountain, to slip through the white, to steal the fire that still breathed beneath the ice. They told him it was just a stone, just a coal, spark, a relic. They didn't tell him it was alive. Corin set off at dawn, under a sky bruised with violet, his boots crunched against a frozen river, his breath coiling upward in pale ribbons. He wore 3 coats, 2 scarves, and carried a dagger too small to matter. But he had hands that could open any lock, feet that made no sound, and eyes that saw what others missed. The wind howled, but he pressed on, past the dead pine forests, past the twisted remains of caravans long frozen mid-escape. He slept inside a hollowed tree, warmed only by memory. He dreamed of fire, of glowing scales, of wings that blocked out the sun. But when he awoke, it was colder than before. On the 7th night, the mountain found him. It rose out of the fog like a sleeping god, smooth, faceted, a prism of frozen light. Every side was a mirror reflecting not the boy, but the world that had forgotten him. Svarnheim, the dragon's tomb, or its cradle. Corin climbed, his fingers bleeding. The ice was like obsidian, slick and strange. It whispered when the wind struck it. Whispers like words. Almost, but not quite. He reached a ledge, fell to his knees, breathed in a mouthful of silence so thick it stung his lungs. Then he heard it. A pulse, a heartbeat, slow, ancient, low as thunder, deep as the roots of the world, and beneath his hand. The ice was warm. Corin found the crack by accident. A hairline fracture along the base of the mountain, slid inside, down a tunnel carved not by man, but by breath. Hot, molten breath. The deeper he went, the warmer it grew, and the more he forgot what cold ever felt like, at last. The cavern opened before him. Massive, silent, timeless, and in the center, it lay the dragon, not curled, not chained, but resting, like a god who had dreamed too long. Its scales were the color of old bronze, cracked with glowing lines like rivers of magma. Its wings were folded like cathedral walls, its eyes closed, but fluttering, as if dancing through dreams far older than the stars. Corin stared, breathless. He had come to steal the fire, but now, wasn't sure he could even touch it then. The dragon's eye opened, amber, vertical pupil, focused on him. The dragon's eye was not what he expected. It was vast, yes, and ancient. Its slit pupil trembled with the weight of 1,000 years. But within it, he saw no hunger, no fury, no immediate death, as all the stories had promised. He saw recognition in something else, something far older than language, sorrow. Corin stood frozen, every inch of him pulled taut like the string of a bow. His instincts screamed run, but something deeper, something quieter, whispered stay. So he did. The cavern held its breath.
Oh, the dragon did not move.
Then, slowly, it exhaled. A warm wind poured from its nostrils, washing over Corin like the sigh of an ancient forest. It smelled of ash and roses, of molten gold and forgotten songs. It didn't speak, not aloud, but the voice. It filled Corin's skull like thunder wrapped in velvet. You've come for the ember? He should have denied it, should have lied, should have played the clever little thief and claimed he was lost, freezing, frightened. But standing in the presence of this great being, he could not lie. Not here, not to it. He nodded once. The dragon's eye blinked. Slowly. The sound was like two glaciers shifting. So many come to steal fire. So few. Understand what fire costs. Corin opened his mouth. No words came out. Just a breath. And a single question. Are you the last? The dragon closed its eye again, and when it answered, it was quieter. Yes, but do you sleep? Corin whispered the question as though it might shatter the cave around them. He wasn't sure why he asked. Only that the silence needed filling, because the world asked us to burn for it. The voice echoed within him now, not in words, but in images. He saw visions flash like lightning behind his eyes. A sky torn open by wings of flame. Cities bathed in firelight. Both beautiful and terrible. Crowds cheering as dragons died in chains. And the last of them, curling into the mountain, carrying embers in its belly like secrets. We gave warmth, and they made war. We gave light, and they forged blades. We gave our fire, till there was none left. Corin stepped forward, slowly, cautiously, as if walking into a sacred dream. But they need you, he whispered. His voice echoed, so small in that vastness. The dragon's eye opened again. This time, softer. Almost. Curious. They think fire is just warmth, just power, just conquest. But fire is also comfort. It's the hearth. It's the thing we gather around when everything else has fallen away. His voice broke. My mother died in the frost. Oh. My sister froze in her sleep, and He stopped. He couldn't say it. But the dragon saw it anyway. You carry sorrow. Like a torch. A long pause stretched between them. The kind of silence that lives in mountains. Then, the dragon began to move. Not all at once. Not violently. A single claw. Shifting like a continent. Scales grinding softly as it unfolded one wing. Just a fraction releasing a wave of heat so pure it made Corin's knees buckle. It reached toward the center of the cavern, to a small stone pedestal. Upon it, something glowed faintly, like coal. But more than that, like a heartbeat trapped in amber. The ember you seek is a choice. Corin's brows furrowed. A choice. Touch it and carry my flame. Become what I once was. But know this little thief, the fire does not obey. It changes. Consumes. He stepped toward it. The ember pulsed softly, bathing the cavern in warm, flickering light. As he reached out, memories rose within him. Sister's laughter before the cold stole it. The alley where he slept on nights he wasn't wanted. The queen's envoy, placing gold in his hand with promises made of ice. And now, this choice. His fingers hovered above the ember. Then he spoke, not to the dragon, but to the flame itself. If I carry you, will you help me bring warmth back to the world? The ember answered in silence. But somehow he knew yes, but not without cost. He closed his eyes, touched it. Pain. Not screaming pain, no. This pain was cleansing, like frost burned away by sunrise. Like sorrow being carved out of the soul. Like every memory he ever held, being set alight. Flames crawled up his arm, not burning flesh, but changing it, marking him, claiming him. His eyes snapped open. They glowed. Amber, like the dragon's. Behind him, the great worm lowered its head. So be it. Carry now the last ember. But remember, Corin of Vyrnhal, you are no longer just a thief. You are fire-wrought. You are watched. You are the beginning. And with that, the dragon closed its eyes once more, not in sleep, but in trust. Corin turned. The ember pulsed in his chest now, not his hand. He walked out of the mountain. And where his feet touched snow, spring began to bloom. Let the world around you soften. Feel your breath slow once more. You are still here with me in the realm of frost and flame. The boy who was once a thief now walked with fire beneath his ribs. Corin emerged from the mountain not as he had entered. When he had first climbed Svarnheim, he was wrapped in rags, shivering and small. Now, the wind did not touch him. The cold fled from him. The snow melted where he stood. Something ancient, something mighty, had awoken within him, stirred in his blood like memory. It pulsed behind his eyes like distant thunder. And yet, he remained himself. Just a boy with a heavy gift. The journey back was quieter. No beasts dared approach. No storms blocked his path. Even the sky. It softened its clouds, parting like curtains before a sun not seen in decades. Villages that once curled around dying embers felt warmth in their bones for the first time in generations. Fields that had been frost-locked now breathed with green beneath his steps. The people whispered of miracles. They lit candles. They prayed to a fire they no longer feared. And Corin said nothing. He merely walked and watched. By the time he reached Vyrnhal, word had traveled ahead of him. The gates were open, not for a queen, not for a warlord, but for him, for the fire-wrought. Children tossed flowers at his feet. Old men knelt and wept. Women reached for his hands with eyes full of awe and fear. But Corin did not speak of dragons. He did not boast of mountains or glowing eyes or whispered truths. He only said, I found what was lost, and I brought it home. The queen awaited him at the obsidian keep. She sat beneath banners made of silver thread, her throne raised above a hall of dying nobility. She wore a crown of black ice and eyes that had not wept in 20 years. Show me, she demanded, her voice like frost over still water. Corin stepped forward. He unwrapped the cloth from his chest and revealed not the ember, but the fire it had become. It lived within him now. His chest glowed faintly, like a forge banked low. His breath steamed with power, and behind his gaze there was light. I asked for the ember, the queen said slowly. I brought the flame, he replied. She rose from her throne. There are wars to fight, kingdoms to reclaim, enemies in every shadow. That fire is not yours, it belongs to the realm. Corin tilted his head. No, he said quietly. It belongs to no one. That is why it lived. The guards stepped forward. Swords were drawn. But as steel neared him, it melted into puddles of glowing orange. No flame, no attack, just presence. Corin turned and walked out. The queen called after him, shouting of duty, of obedience, of royal command. But the fire did not turn back, and neither did he. That night, the people of Vyrnhal saw something they had never seen before. The stars blazed across the sky, no longer hidden by endless snow clouds. The city glowed with warmth not from torches, but from within its stone. In the far distance, high above the mountains, they saw wings, not vast, not terrible, but gentle. A dragon, flying once more. Corin returned not to the palace, but to the alleys, to the cold stones where he had once slept. He knelt beside the spot where his sister had drawn her name in the frost with a stick, and he whispered, I'm warm now. As the days passed, Corin became something else. Not a king, not a god, but a keeper. He traveled, wherever the land had frozen over. He walked, did not burn. He healed. The sick warmed at his side, Hungry felt full in his presence. The dying passed with peace and light. He asked for nothing. The fire changed him. Yes, but it never consumed him, because he had been empty enough to hold it. And far away, in the heart of Svarnheim, the dragon watched through closed eyes and dreamed, not of death, not of war, but of life. Forests blooming where bones once lay, of children laughing beside glowing rivers, of a world reborn, because one boy did not steal, he carried. The seasons shifted, slowly, gently, as if afraid to wake the old world too quickly. Spring crept across the snow like spilled gold. Birdsong returned to trees that had forgotten how to host nests, and small villages tucked into hillsides began to stitch hope into their roofs again. They spoke of the fire-wrought, a boy wrapped in warmth who walked barefoot through frost, leaving green where he stepped, said he could whisper to dying coals and make them sing, that he carried a spark of something older than gods and kinder than kings. Corin wandered far. He did not follow roads, he followed cold. Wherever the frost lingered, wherever fire had gone out, he would go. And each place he visited bloomed behind him like waking memory. He didn't speak much, but when he did, his voice was low, measured, warm. He would sit beside broken hearths and say only, "Let's remember how to burn." One night, he came to a village with no name, was buried in fog, nestled deep in a ravine choked with shadow. No laughter, no light. Just the slow creak of ice settling where windows once held glass. They watched him arrive from behind locked doors. Silent faces, pale, thin, sickened not just by cold, but by despair. At the heart of the village stood a dead tree, blackened, split. Around it were stone circles, worn down by centuries of forgotten prayer. He touched its trunk, and the tree whispered. Corin sat beneath it. He did not speak. He simply lit a fire, small, gentle. A cup of warmth in a valley full of ghosts. One child approached. Then another, an elder, a widow. A man with frostbitten hands who hadn't wept in years. They sat around the fire, saying nothing, until Corin opened his hand. In his palm glowed a single ember, no bigger than a raindrop, but alive. Watching, listening. He looked at the child beside him. "What's your name?" he asked softly. "Emery," she said. "I haven't been warm in my dreams for so long," he smiled. "Then we'll fix that." That night, the villagers dreamed differently. They did not dream of hunger, or of the endless white, or of the queen's taxes, or the wolves. They dreamed of fires in old homes, of bread rising, of candles that never went out. And in each dream, a quiet boy stood beside them, offering an ember. When dawn came, the fog was gone. The villagers stepped out into gold-filtered morning. The dead tree now bloomed with leaves like flame. The air held warmth like breath. The stone circles sang faintly with life. Corin had left before sunrise, as always. But where he sat, he had left something behind. A mark, not burned into earth, but into memory. The people no longer feared the cold, because now they remembered how to hold the heat. Days turned into weeks, weeks into moons. And far in the west, beyond the drowned plateau, something stirred. Not frost, not man, but flame, different kind, unclean, violent, unbound. It crawled from the ruins of a shattered forge once used to build war machines powered by stolen dragon bone, a place where fire had been twisted, commanded, enslaved. The forge's death had cracked the earth, but now its broken heart beat again. This flame did not whisper, it screamed, and in its wake, nothing grew. Corin felt it before he saw it, a wrongness, like ash caught in the lungs, like warmth without kindness. He stood on a cliff overlooking a black valley where once a forest had danced with color. Now it was ash, gray, crumbling, slick with soot. A figure waited at the center. Not man, not dragon, but something born from what remained when both were destroyed. It was flame given hate, given shape, given voice, and it spoke. Thief of fire, bearer of false warmth. Why do you not burn? Corin stepped forward. I do burn, he said softly, but I burn for something. The creature laughed. His voice sounded like cracking timber and boiling blood. Then you are a fool. Fire serves no one. It devours. It rules. Corin raised his hand. The ember glowed brighter now, responding, trembling with knowing. I've seen fire feed kingdoms, seen it sing lullabies to the dying. You are not fire, you are ruin, the thing charged, flame twisted into blades. Its body a storm of burning bones and molten armor. But Corin stood calm. He closed his eyes, and he remembered. The mountain, the heartbeat, the dragon's eye. He remembered the warmth of his sister's laugh, the softness of snow melting beneath blooming flowers, the villagers dreaming in peace. And then he exhaled. The fire within him did not explode. It expanded, like sunrise over frozen fields, like a sigh that warmed every forgotten corner of the world. Light poured from his chest. Soft, steady, unyielding, the creature screamed, shrank, cracked, and fell to ash. Not destroyed, but released. The twisted fire had been unbound, and what remained was silence. Corin stood alone once more, a boy, a keeper, but the ember within him pulsed stronger now, not in power, but in clarity. He was no longer just the one who carried the fire. He was the one who protected its meaning. Sleepy one, ... Let your breath drift slowly in and gently out. Let your body grow heavy with comfort. The story continues, but there is no need to chase it. Only let it come to you. Like a warm breeze slipping beneath your door, because the fire remembers you. Corin returned to the north, not to hide, not to run, but because the mountain had begun to whisper again. Svarnheim. The glass-veiled peak where it all began, he knew. The dragon was stirring, not in pain, not in anger, but in invitation. And the journey was easier this time. The snow did not bite. The wind did not scream. Every footstep was met with silence that welcomed rather than warned. Even the trees bowed slightly, as if recognizing him. And when he reached the mirror ice ledge that overlooked the world, the mountain opened. A narrow line of fire running up the crystal wall like a heartbeat returning. And Corin entered once more. The cavern had changed. It was no longer cold stone wrapped in slumber. The walls pulsed faintly with light, like veins carrying memory. The air was warm and fragrant, with scents he couldn't name, like sunlight caught in feathers or the breath of stars. The dragon lay where it had before, but its eyes were open now, both of them, and they were watching him with the quiet, patient gaze of something that had seen the beginning and would see the end. You have walked far, said the voice, not aloud, not with lips, but within. Always within. Corin bowed his head. I've tried to carry you carefully. You have done more than carry. You have healed. The great beast lowered its head. Closer now. Its breath no longer rumbled. Him hummed. A warm, bone-deep sound that settled into the cave like a lullaby. The ember inside you is no longer mine. Corin looked up. It isn't. No. You have made it yours. You fed it not with command, but with compassion. That is why it grew. Corin stepped forward. I didn't think I could do any of this, he whispered. I was just a thief. The dragon blinked. Slow, soft. No soul is just anything. Not when fire chooses them. Then. The cavern ceiling shifted. Cracks of gold light spread across the stone like dawn spilling into a temple. Above them, set into the very mountain's heart, hung hundreds of floating shards of crystal. Each one held a flicker of flame. Some danced, some dimmed. Some pulsed like distant drums. Corin stared. What are they, embers? The dragon's voice was low, reverent. Memories of those who carried fire before you. Not all were dragons. Corin's breath caught. He saw faces, not clearly, but as impressions in the flame. A girl in armor, holding a sword made of ash. An old man with hands like tree roots, lighting candles for the forgotten. A mother holding a newborn, shielding it from snow with a cloak of firelight. So many stories, so many flames. He reached toward one. It shimmered, and then he felt it. A moment from a life not his, a dying battlefield. A warrior choosing not to strike, but to sing. Her voice became flame, and the flame became peace. He pulled back, overwhelmed. The dragon rumbled softly. Fire remembers. Corin turned, his voice trembling. Will I become one of them one day? Soon the dragon's breath slowed, like the tide pulling back. Not yet. You still have warmth to give. A pause, then. Corin asked the question that had lived inside him since the very beginning. Why me? The dragon regarded him quietly and said, Because you asked not what fire could do for you, but who it could warm. Corin closed his eyes. The fire in his chest flickered gently, no longer a burden, but a friend. He stood still, not in fear, not in doubt, but in peace, and the mountain exhaled. Outside, the world turned beneath a sky painted in flame-streaked stars. Somewhere, far from the mountain, a child touched her first candle. A widow found warmth in her bones again. Traveler lit a lantern and whispered thanks. They did not know his name. They felt him, because fire, when shared, does not vanish. It multiplies. Close your eyes if you haven't already. Let the sound of this story carry you like a warm wind through a quiet winter field. Breathe in softly and let go slowly. You are safe here.
You are warm here.
You are where fire lives not to burn, but to comfort. And so, the story continues. After the mountain, Corin no longer traveled as a stranger. He walked the world like an ember drifting through night air, gentle, unassuming. But wherever he passed, the dark grew thinner. In every village he visited, the people began lighting lanterns in his memory, not in worship, not in fear, but in quiet recognition. A lantern for warmth, a lantern for grief, a lantern for the hope that someone, somewhere, still carried the fire. In a fishing village by the ice-locked sea, Corin found a boy standing at the shoreline, holding a wooden bowl in his hands. The sea was still frozen. The fish had vanished seasons ago. But the boy came every morning, offering the bowl to the waves. What are you doing? Corin asked softly. The boy blinked, startled, then answered, feeding the sea. No, but it's empty, Corin said. The boy looked down. I know, but I wanted to remember that I tried. Corin knelt beside him. He placed his hand over the boy's, and the bowl began to steam. A faint warmth rose from it, glowing like sunlit honey. The boy's eyes widened, and from beneath the ice came a ripple, then another, then a flash of silver. The sea was not dead. It had only been asleep. The boy laughed for the first time in months, and the villagers, seeing it, began to sing again. Not to celebrate Corin, but to celebrate each other. He stayed one more night, telling the children stories of dragons that slept beneath tree roots, of candles that carried memories instead of wax, of fires that whispered old songs only kind hearts could hear. And when he left, he placed a single lantern at the edge of the sea. Its flame danced against the morning wind, never flickering. Far inland, deep in a city gripped by silence, an old woman tended a library of forgotten things, scrolls, bones, letters written in tears and ink, songs sung only once. She had not seen another living soul in years. But one morning, she found a book waiting on her desk, one she had never catalogued. Its spine was warm. She opened it. Inside were pages of names of every village, every person, every song that the cold had swallowed. And at the bottom, a signature. Corin. She lit a candle that night. And the library, for the first time in a decade, felt like home. Time drifted gently. Corin did not grow old like others, not quickly. But he began to feel the slow ache of the world turning. He no longer ran from place to place. He walked slower, looked longer, listened more. He spent his days not giving flame, but teaching others how to tend it. In a highland village carved into the cliffs, he taught blacksmiths how to forge with breath instead of bellows. Their steel began to sing. In a cold orchard beyond the forest, he showed farmers how to speak to seeds in the language of heat. Their trees bloomed in winter. In the ruins of an old temple, he taught monks to carry warmth and silence. Their prayers spread like kindling across the land. Soon, Others began to glow. Not like him, not as bright, but enough. Enough to light lanterns for others, enough to carry embers for the tired, enough to remind the world. That fire was not gone, only waiting to be shared. And all the while, Svarnheim watched. The dragon dreamed, and its dreams were warm. Let your body drift with the rhythm of breath, in through the nose and out. Like a quiet flame sighing into the night. Fire hasn't gone, it lives within. And tonight speaks through story. There came a night unlike any other. It began quietly, just a stillness in the air, as though the world had paused mid-breath. But soon, people across the realm began to wake from their dreams, each of them hearing the same sound, weeping, not sorrowful, but ancient, reverent, like rain tapping softly on stone after a long drought, like joy wrapped in mourning, came from the sky, and when they looked up, the stars were falling, not with violence, not in streaks of fire, but gently, slowly, like embers drifting down from a hearth far above. One by one, the stars touched the earth, not burning it, but warming it. Where they landed, the snow melted. The soil softened, and flowers bloomed beneath moonlight. Children gathered them in their hands, these glowing drops of sky, and laughed. Elders wept with gratitude they did not understand. And in every heart, one thought echoed, "He is near." Corin stood in the center of a wide plain when the stars came. He watched them descend like lanterns cast from the heavens, not for spectacle, not for prophecy, but for remembrance, because the fire was remembering him and the dragon. High above, buried in glass and ice, Svarnheim stirred. For the first time in 100 years, it lifted its head, its wings unfolded, stretching wide against the mountain walls. Molten gold rolled along the cracks in its scales, and it spoke, not through words, not through sound, but through the stars themselves, message ancient and soft. One of ours is ready. Corin felt it, not pain, not fear, but peace. It's a kind of peace that comes only when you've finished what you were meant to begin. When you've planted warmth in places that once knew only frost. When you've turned silence into song. He closed his eyes, and the ember inside him pulsed once. Then again. Then slowly. It opened. He did not fall. He did not collapse. He simply became light, not fire to destroy, not flame to conquer, but warmth given freely rising like breath, lifting into the star-filled sky. And as his body faded, his memory bloomed. Across the world, people felt it. The baby stirred and smiled in her sleep. A fireplace that had gone out reignited on its own. An old man found his late wife's scarf warm again with her scent. A cold night became bearable without blankets because the ember was not gone. It had spread, they say Corin, became a constellation that night, one you can only see when you're truly at peace. It looks like a single glowing ember, hovering just above the horizon. Travelers call it the last light, children call it the boy star. But those who knew the stories, they simply whisper, "He's still walking." And in the heart of Svarnheim, the dragon smiled and returned to sleep. Not because the world had grown cold again, but because now, it didn't need watching. Rest now, deeper still. You are far from your worries, far from frost, far from flame. This is a place of memory, and memory, as you know, is where all warmth begins again. Years passed, and more. And though the boy called Corin had long since drifted into legend, his embers remained. They didn't live in temples or books or thrones. They lived in quiet places, in hands that shared bread, in feet that walked beside the tired, in strangers who offered shelter without question, and in children who learned to light candles before saying goodnight, not because they feared the dark, but because they honored the light. In a quiet valley, tucked between the roots of forgotten mountains, a village stood where none had ever stood before. There were no roads leading to it, no name written on maps, but somehow people found it. They were drawn there, by a warmth that wasn't fire, by a promise in the air that said, "You belong." This village was called Ember Deep, and at the center of it burned a single flame. It did not flicker. It did not smoke. It did not need tending. It simply glowed softly, steadily, endlessly. No one knew where it came from. but everyone who sat beside it dreamed of Corin. One night, an old traveler arrived. He carried no bag, wore no shoes. His eyes were clouded with age, but his voice was clear and kind. He sat beside the flame and said nothing for a long time. Then a child asked him, "Did you know the boy who carried the ember?" The traveler smiled. "I walked with him once," he whispered, "in a forest where even the trees had forgotten how to feel the sun." The child leaned closer. "What was he like?" The traveler closed his eyes. He was quiet, but never cold. He asked more questions than he answered. And when he looked at you, it felt like he saw the part of you that hadn't given up yet. The child was quiet. Then, "Do you miss him?" The old man nodded. "Every day. But I also see him. In you, and in this place. And in every hand that lights a lantern without asking for praise." The child thought for a moment, then whispered, "I want to be like him." The traveler's eyes sparkled faintly. "Then you already are." And he placed something in the child's hand. Single ember, still warm and ember deep. No one grows rich, no one rules. But no one goes hungry, no one shivers. And no one ever has to walk through the cold alone. Because there, every hearth is lit with memory. Every soul carries a spark. And every child grows up knowing that fire was never just about heat. It was about hope. Far away, high above, in the place where the stars turn their gaze toward Earth, the constellation known as the Boy Star still glows. It burns not with heat, but with remembrance. Not every night. Only when someone somewhere chooses kindness over comfort, compassion over control, warmth over wrath, then, and only then, the stars whisper again. He walks still, and in Svarnheim, the dragon dreams. This time, not alone, for beneath its wings, beneath the stone and ash, a tiny flame flickers. A new ember, breathing, waiting, growing, and when it wakes, won't need to be stolen. It will be shared. Let yourself sink into warmth now. Feel it in your fingers, in your chest. In that quiet place behind your eyes, where stories settle into dreams, you are safe here. The fire has not gone. It has simply changed hands. In the village of Ember Deep, time passed not in hours, but in kindness. There were no clocks, only sunrises and soft good nights, only harvests and shared loaves of bread, only quiet laughter and the sound of snow falling gently outside the window. And at the center of it all, the flame. It never grew brighter, never grew dim, simply stayed exactly as it needed to be. Until the day it blinked. Just once. A soft flicker. So subtle most didn't notice. But one did. A child, not the youngest, nor the strongest. Just still. Still in the way rivers are before they know how to move. Still in the way a candle sits patiently before being lit. Her name was Nima. Nima had always sat near the flame, though she never touched it. While others warmed their hands, she only watched and listened and remembered. She remembered the stories others forgot, the rhythms of footsteps, the names of travelers who passed through only once, the way the stars turned, slowly, like an old music box. She remembered the sound of sorrow and how sometimes the fire grew quieter when someone was grieving nearby. So when the flame blinked, she didn't panic. She didn't cry out. She simply whispered, "You're ready, aren't you?" The flame pulsed, once softly, as if breathing in agreement. That night, Nima didn't go home. She stayed beside the flame. She didn't sleep. She watched, waited, and just before dawn, the fire leaned toward her, not with heat, but with memory. She saw Corin walking through frost with his hands open, never clenched. A dragon sleeping beneath a glass mountain, dreaming in color. Lanterns lit across the world like heartbeat constellations. A forge once twisted into war, now singing lullabies, ember deep, blooming like a flame made of kindness. And then she saw herself, not as she was, but as she would be. When she opened her eyes, the fire was smaller now. Not dying, just giving. A single ember hovered in the air, waiting. She reached out, not with greed, not with fear, but with a breath, and the ember chose her. The next morning, the people gathered to find the fire gone. Not extinguished, not stolen. Gone the way music vanishes after the last note carried into silence. They turned to find Nima standing at the center. She said only one thing. It walks again. And they understood. Nima left the village with no map. She didn't need one. The cold would guide her. The empty would call. Because wherever there is silence, the ember belongs. Not to warm a throne, but to warm a hand. A tear. A home. A heart. Some said she walked straight to the sea and lit candles for the lost. Some say she entered the ruins of the forge and sang the dragons back to sleep. Others believe she found a second mountain. And within it, a voice that asked, "Are you ready to carry it farther than the last?" And she whispered, "Yes, the fire does not end. It remembers. And the ember, it is always searching. For still hands. For quiet courage. For the ones who ask not what flame can do, but who it can heal." Close your eyes, gentle listener. There's one more ember. It flickers now near your heart. Can you feel it? Soft, steady yours? Not to keep, but to carry. Now breathe with me one more time, in through the nose, and out slowly. Let your shoulders melt. Let your spine settle. The story is still here. Not as sound, but as presence. The flame has entered your quiet, and here it will rest a while. We return now, not to mountains, nor thrones, nor dragons, but to the space within, to the place where your breath meets your thoughts, where silence is a door, and memory is the key. For the fire, you see, has always been there, waiting, listening, becoming. In your first heartbreak, it was there, quiet ember, catching your tear and holding it like morning dew. In every act of kindness, you never told anyone about it, pulsed. In every moment you were tired but still held the door, still listened, still stayed. The fire remembered. Oh, you may not feel worthy. You may feel small, but so was the first spark. So is Corin. So is Nima. So is every seed that becomes a forest. Fire never demands you be great, only that you be present. They say in the farthest north where the snow no longer falls, there stands a tree made of stone and light. No roots, no leaves, only branches that stretch into the clouds, like questions never answered, carved into its trunk. Our names, not of heroes, not of rulers, but of the warm-hearted, the steady, the brave, the ones who carried the ember even when no one saw. And there's a space for one more name, yours, not because you sought it, but because you listened. Because even now you carry a warmth that could change someone's world with a whisper, a gesture, a moment of care. Let the ember live in your breath tonight. Let it glow behind your eyes. You don't need to act yet. Just rest. Just dream. Because the fire that changes the world starts not in a roar, but in a hush. In the quiet between words. The space between heartbeats. Right now, right here. Somewhere in the high and silent dark. The dragon stirs again. Not to rise. Not to speak. But simply to feel. Because far below, in a bed, in a room, in a soul once cold, the ember has returned, and it remembers your name. Welcome back, gentle dreamer. The night is deeper now, but the warmth is closer too. Let your body release. Let the story fold around you like a woolen blanket, spun with memory and hope. This is the hour when fires speak the clearest. They say, "You are not alone." Nima walked for many years. Her hair grew long, her shoulders strong. But her heart remained soft, tender, like the first snowfall on soil that has waited all year. She no longer lit fires. She became them. Wherever she went, she did not shout. She listened. The ember within her listened too. Sometimes she would stop, tilt her head, and say, "There is sorrow here." Then she would stay, until the sorrow remembered how to speak, and the silence, how to breathe. She came once to a place where winter had stayed too long. The land was gray, the trees asleep for years, and the people numb. Not cruel, not unkind, just tired. Too tired to feel the cold, or the hunger, or the longing for warmth. They had not forgotten how to love. They had only forgotten that love could return. Nima sat at the edge of their village for 3 days. No words, no fire, just presence. On the 4th day, a child approached. He did not speak either. He only knelt beside her. Then another came, and another. By nightfall, half the village had gathered. Not for warmth, but to remember what gathering felt like. And when the stars rose, Nima opened her palm. The ember floated forth like breath, and for the first time in years, they saw their own reflections in the light. Not who they had been, but who they could be again. They didn't cry, they didn't cheer, they simply held hands. The frost beneath them softened, not melted, not broken, but forgiven. That is what the ember does. It doesn't burn away the past, it warms it, so it may be held without pain, so it may be carried not as burden, but as story. When Nima left the next day, no one stopped her. They simply lit a lantern, not to guide her, but to thank her. And as she disappeared into the fog beyond the trees, a garden bloomed where she had sat, not of flowers, but of fire. Tiny lights, dancing like sleeping dreams just beneath the earth, and far away in the mountain's heart. The dragon dreamed again. Its slumber was deep now, not because it was weary, but because the world no longer needed watching. The ember had passed through many hands, and now the world had learned how to keep it alive. Together, somewhere Nima crossed a river that wasn't water, walked across snow that hummed, entered a place with no name. There, waiting for her, was a figure wearing no crown, carrying no blade, only light in their eyes and warmth in their hands. Corin, they did not speak, they only knelt. And between them, the ember pulsed stronger than ever, not one flame, but many. Too many to name, all those who had carried it, all those who would. And in that moment, the cold, once the ruler of all things, exhaled and let go. Settle deeper. Feel your body soften into the night. Let your chest rise like a hill and fall like a leaf drifting slowly downward. This is a story of warmth without heat, flight without fire, of presence without words. This is where the ember becomes everything. Nima and Corin did not stay in that place. They could have. It was timeless, weightless, a hush so perfect it echoed through history. But they knew the ember does not rest. It is not a crown to wear. It is a bridge, a way forward, a path for others to walk. So they walked again, together and apart, through memory, through dream. They visited cities made of smoke and song, mountains that wept molten gold, forests where leaves whispered names older than air itself. Everywhere they went, they left no mark, only warmth. And in every generation that followed, there was always someone. A baker who gave bread without price, soldier who lowered their sword, a child who forgave first, a wanderer who stayed just long enough to help then vanished. None of them called themselves keepers of the ember, but they were, because they acted with quiet fire, the kind that cannot be taught, only remembered. One day, far beyond the edge of maps, a child was born under a sky lit by green stars. She did not cry. She hummed. She did not grasp. She glowed. And when she touched her mother's hand, the room grew warmer, not in temperature, but in spirit, as if the air itself recognized her. They named her Leora, which means light from within. And from her earliest years, she saw things others didn't. A candle that flickered when someone nearby was lying. Ash that shimmered when someone remembered joy. The breath of birds as they slept visible in morning mist. But most of all, she saw paths in places others saw only darkness. At 5, she walked into a blizzard to find a lost shepherd. At 8, she mended a broken family with a single shared story. At 10, she stood beside a dying tree for 3 days. And when she left, the tree had grown a single green shoot. Her village didn't worship her. They simply followed her example. She taught them how to carry warmth in silence, how to tend flame without fire, how to be still. One night, she found a letter tucked beneath her pillow. No name, no seal. Only these words: when you are ready, go where the world no longer burns. She did not ask questions. She only packed one thing, a lantern unlit. Her journey took her across ruin and wonder. She passed through cities carved into the ribs of mountains, through ruins that wept when sung to, through oceans so calm they reflected not just the sky, but the soul. And finally, she reached a field of ash. Gray, endless, silent. No wind, no birds. Just the memory of fire long gone. And there, in the very center, stood a mirror. It was tall as a tower, wide as the horizon, but it reflected nothing. Not sky, not self, just stillness. Leora stepped close. I whispered, I am ready. The mirror did not open. It glowed, and in that glow, she saw Corin Nima, others, many, all walking through the same field, across dream, and with them, the fire. Not burning, just being. The mirror softened, melted, and where it stood, a path appeared. It led nowhere and everywhere. Leora stepped forward. Behind her, a single ember floated in the air, watching, followed her into the path, in the field of ash. Breathed once, then bloomed, not with fire, but with light. You're almost fully in dream now, just a breath away. Soft, safe, still. Let your hands rest. Let your thoughts dim. Let the story carry you. This part is quiet, not because nothing happens, but because everything becomes. The path that opened from the mirror had no direction, no horizon, no wind, just soil that remembered roots and stars that waited patiently above. Leora walked with her lantern still unlit, not because there was no flame, but because she was beginning to understand. She was the flame. Each step she took echoed behind her, but not as sound, as growth. Leaves unfurled in her wake. Out. Soft moss, blanketed stones, long thought dead. And tiny lights danced above her shoulders, not fireflies, but flickers of memory. Memories not her own. A soldier who chose to sing rather than strike. A dying queen who gave her last warmth to a child. A farmer who lit his field not to burn it, but to welcome spring. Each step of Leora's walk was a thread weaving their acts together, not into a banner, but into a garden. She reached a clearing. At its center, a tree. You know this tree. You've seen it in your dreams. Tall and silent, with branches like ancient arms embracing the stars. Its bark, silver-veined. Its leaves, fire-colored, yet never burning.
Ow.
This was the first tree, planted when the world was still cooling. Not with a seed, but with an ember.
Ow.
Beneath it stood a figure. He had no shadow, no face, only presence. It was Corin, not the boy he once was, but the story of him. The warmth remembered. Leora stepped forward, the lantern glowing now in her hands, still unlit, but heavy with promise. Corin spoke his voice not loud, not soft, but true. Do you know why we walk? Leora nodded. We keep the ember from growing cold? Corin smiled. Not to keep it from growing cold, but to remind it that it can never truly die. He lifted one hand, and beside him, other figures appeared. Nima, a weaver from the Sea Islands, an old librarian who once sang to ash,
Ow.
a traveler who had no name, only warmth. All of them keepers, all of them flames, not heroes, rememberers. The tree began to bloom, not with flowers, but with lanterns. One for every hand that ever gave instead of took. For every soul that chose gentleness when anger was easier. For every whisper of hope in the ruins of old fire, the lanterns pulsed. And Leora, for the first time, felt all of them. Not around her, but within. She opened her lantern. Not with a match, not with magic, just with a breath. The ember drifted upward, slow, sacred, steady, and nestled itself into the tree's hollow heart. The bark shimmered, the roots spread, and from deep beneath the world, a light bloomed. It rose through the dirt, through stone, through silence, reached the stars, and in that moment, the world remembered what fire was for. Not Tuskwork, not to warn, not to fear, but to hold, to share, to be. The tree became a place not of worship, but of return. People began to dream of it, not to visit, but to rest. A resting place not of death, but of becoming. Where embers once buried in sorrow rose again in peace, and Leora she stayed. Not to rule, but to welcome. Those who arrived brought no offerings, only stories, and she listened. Just as Corin once had, because all flame asks is to be witnessed. Sink even deeper now. Let your thoughts stretch out like roots. Let your breath soften into stillness. Let the story continue not around you, but through you. You are not just listening anymore. You are part of it now.
Oh.
In the garden of the first tree, time moved like a candle's breath, steady and small. The sun rose, stars circled. The winds came and went like old friends. But beneath its branches, the flame remained. And with it, so did Leora. She grew as all things do, not taller, not older, but deeper. She was known not as a guardian, nor a priestess, nor a queen, but simply the one who listens, because people came, told her things they could not tell anyone else. A daughter who lit her mother's fire one last time, a lost sailor who followed starlight through the fog of grief, a stranger who gave away his only coat and couldn't explain why. They came without seeking reward, only understanding. And Leora gave it, not through answers, but through silence. Because the flame had taught her something even Corin never said aloud. Sometimes the greatest warmth is simply being seen, not extinguished. There came a night, quiet, as all sacred nights are. Clouds heavy with sleep drifted across the sky. The first tree shimmered with lanterns dim, peaceful. Leora sat beneath its roots. Her hand rested over her chest. She was not ill. She was not fading. She was simply ready. And so she whispered a word she had never spoken before. Now, the flame in her heart stirred once more, soft, gentle, slow. She placed her hand to the earth, and the ember that had lived within her returned to the soil, not buried, not hidden. Planted from that spot, a light began to grow. Not fire, not heat, but something even more ancient, a listening flame. It spread slowly across the world, not like wildfire, like song, in the silence before speech, in the warmth of a hand held in sorrow, in the stillness between tears. It was there, and it began to change things. People who had never met began to dream of one another. Messages passed in the wind, not written, but felt. And far beneath the snowdrifts, plants began to bloom again, not from light, but from memory. Because the warmth was no longer in the ember, it was in the world. The aura did not vanish. She did not ascend. She did not dissolve into story. She became the pause before a word of kindness, the hush before a fire is lit, the comfort in the final breath before sleep. She became what all embers hope to be, a warmth that listens, stays. And the dragon, yes, Svarnheim still slumbers, but it no longer dreams alone. Within its chest now lives not a hoarded flame, but 1,000 tiny echoes of every ember ever carried. Not loud, not bright, but steady. And when the wind passes through its crystal cavern, you can still hear it. The sound of stories wrapped in fire, wrapped in stillness, wrapped in you. You've come far, haven't you, all this way? Each word you followed like a glowing stone in the dark. Each breath a gentle step closer to peace. You are here now, at the end of the tale. But let me tell you a secret. There is no end. Only flame. Somewhere, far from stories and snow, a child wakes in the night, afraid of nothing in particular. She doesn't cry. She doesn't call out. She simply waits. And then she feels it, warmth beside her. No form, no sound, just a soft knowing. You are not alone. Somewhere a traveler sets a single lantern on a windowsill. No one asks why, but the neighbors light their own too. By morning, the whole street glows, not in brightness, but in belonging. Somewhere a river that once ran red with ruin begins to sing again. The fish return. The trees lean in. The stones forget their grief. No one saw who brought the ember, but all feel its after. And somewhere, very near, a flame stirs in you. Yes, you. You felt it, haven't you? Not just as warmth, but as memory, as longing, as recognition. You are part of the story now. You always were. Because the ember isn't only a fire, it is a choice. To stay kind in a cold world. To hold someone's silence like it matters. to carry warmth where none is offered, and offer it anyway. So if you ever find yourself weary, not just tired, but soul tired, remember, you don't have to be the hero. You don't have to hold the world. You only need to hold a little flame, even just for a moment, even just for someone. Close your eyes now. Feel the ember behind your ribs, soft, glowing, familiar. It asks nothing of you, only that you let it stay. And one day, when someone else is lost in the dark, you'll find your hand already reaching for theirs. Not to lead, not to save, only to say, I'm here, I remember, let's walk. And that is how the ember lives on, not in legends, not in dragons, not in temples, but in footsteps, in kindness, in you. Thank you for walking so far. Thank you for listening. Thank you for carrying the ember. Sleep now, and let it glow.